right, so thank you everybody for your patience and hanging in there. It's Food History Happy Hour episode 8. I'm Sarah Mossberg Johnson, also known as the Food Historian. And tonight we are going to make a cocktail called Butterflies, which I thought was very appropriate for spring. Okay, good. Cars are fine. Yay! Glenn says did not get hit with the tornado. Glenn lives north of me by about an hour, so that's good. So tonight's cocktail is called Butterflies. It's from the 1946 Stork Club Bartender's Guide. And it's a cocktail glass cocktail, which is like my favorite. So I also have my little mini measure because it calls for a 1/4 ounce of several things. So I'm going to start with our cocktail shaker and some ice, which is already like super melty. So I'm going to put it all in. It calls for shaved ice, the original recipe, but I didn't really feel like doing that today, even though I have my little ice crusher around somewhere, but there we go. And I'm also going to add this one that fell on the table. Alright, so it calls for ice. It calls for, I'm cheating, a 1/4 ounce of lemon juice, which I'm hopefully not going to get all over everything because it's in a squeeze bottle. Alright, that looks 1/4 ounce-ish. We're going to have another pretty pink cocktail today because it calls for a 1/4 ounce of grenadine. Come on. It's my first time opening it. Hi, Becca! Okay, 1/4 ounce of grenadine. Again, I'm gonna, whoop. Oh, that's like perfect. Very proud of myself for that. Sweetie Pie's getting restless, you guys. Do you want to go out? Too bad. You're in here now. Alright, 1/4 ounce of grenadine. And then it calls for 1/2 ounce of Applejack. Where's my ounces? They're there. I'm gonna have to buy more Applejack, you guys. And a 1/4 ounce of gin. So this is a very light cocktail. It's only 3/4 of an ounce of alcohol. Maybe it's a ladies' cocktail. I don't know. You know, no head notes in the 1946 Bartender's Guide. Alright. It's maybe slightly more than a 1/4 ounce, but that's okay. Okay. So we had a 1/4 ounce of grenadine, a 1/4 ounce of lemon juice, a 1/2 ounce of Applejack, and a 1/4 ounce of gin. I'm gonna give it a little shake. Get it nice and cold. It's hot out. Freak out my dog. Like wants to leave, and I'm like, too bad you're in here now. I'm missing comments. I am missing comments. It's so, yes. Glenn asked Stork Club or Stork Club. It's Stork Club. I thought it was Stork Club at first too. That's Sweetie Pie whining to get out of the porch, despite the fact that 5 minutes ago she was whining to get in. So give me 1 second, I'm gonna let her out. I should have just let her out anyway, but here we are. There you go. Now she's like staring through the porch window at me. Okay, here we go. Are you ready? Butterflies cocktail. Oh, it's so pretty. It's also tiny. There's like freaking nothing in there. Alright, well, that's fine. Am I missing anybody else? No. So here we have it. The Butterflies cocktail. Gin, Applejack, grenadine, lemon juice. Let's see how it tastes. It tastes like boozy Kool-Aid, you guys. Really boozy Kool-Aid. Basically. Becca says, sweetie, I already left, Becca. Sorry. Yeah, like not as sweet Kool-Aid, obviously, but that's definitely what it tastes like. Yeah, I would probably drink this again. Alright, so there we have it, Butterfly's Cocktail. Hi, Neil! I thought this is appropriate for spring, not only because it's a pretty color, but also because it's springtime, and I have been convincing Chad not to mow the lawn that much, so that all the bees and the butterflies can get at the dandelions, which are now mostly done, and all the violets. And then I also have a lot of creeping Charlie, which is kind of invasive, but has these little purple flowers that the bees love. And I also saw more bumblebees on my bleeding heart today, so that was cool. So I thought also, because it's springtime, that we could talk about candied, sorry, not candied, edible flowers. Right, I was thinking about all the violets in my yard. Most of them are white, native violets, not viola odorata, I think is the scientific name of the yummy smelling ones. So I don't have any nice smelling violets, although you could candy the native ones and eat them. But violets were definitely an edible flower that was used throughout the 19th century. It's also the main ingredient in creme de violette, which is just brandy and sugar and violets. Oh, Neil is asking me who has who trained with Sweetie Pie. It's like a two-way street. I didn't want her whining in the video, otherwise I probably just would have made her stay in here. And actually, I tried to lock her out, and Chad brought her in anyway. So you can blame Chad for that one. Oh, Becca asked, is the gin flavor super strong or do the other flavors minimize it? So let me taste it again. The gin flavor is not super strong. You can still taste it a little bit. You can't taste apple at all, the Applejack. But between the Applejack and the grenadine and the lemon, it just tastes kind of like fruity and a little bit sour. Glenn says they have carpenter bees all over the holly. Yes, I have a holly tree, but it's mostly dead, which makes me sad. But the woodpeckers like it, and it's also where we hang our bird feeder. So, all right. So going back to flowers, Becca asked, "Are lilacs edible?" So technically, I don't think you can eat lilacs. Maybe you can, but I definitely have a friend who makes lilac syrup, lilac infused syrup. I don't personally care for flowery flavored things. So for instance, there will never be creme de violette in my house. The primary exception being elderberry flower. I do like that, which is the primary ingredient in Saint Germain, if you want to be American about it. Ooh, Scott says, can we get some fun tiki history about candied or preserved hibiscus? I actually totally left hibiscus off my list. That was bad of me. I have a ton of other flowers though that we can talk about. I do love hibiscus tea. Very similar to rose hip tea for those of us in more northerly climes. And there's some really interesting history in Jamaica around hibiscus, but I didn't know that you could candy it. So I don't know anything about candied hibiscus, so I would have to look that up. Which I can, because I have a magic box. But in the meantime, we talked about violet rose. It's another very common edible flower. Rose water and orange blossom water were both, or orange flower water were both very common dessert flavorings prior to the discovery of vanilla from Mexico. What else is on my list? We talked about elderberry flowers. Linden is another edible tree-based flower. If you've ever had linden tea. It's also sometimes called lime tree lindens. Here in the United States, It's American basswood is the indigenous variety here. You can also eat black locust flowers, which smell amazing, but I don't think want to eat. Let me get out I made a list here of all the edible flowers that I had to shut down because I had to restart my computer because I installed new Chrome. Oh, speaking of violet, so violet mints and gum were very popular in the late 19th century. Oh, I talked a little bit about dandelions. Dandelion wine is definitely a thing, and I have seen recipes for fried dandelion flowers. We talked about rose and rose hips. So, interesting thing about orange blossom or orange flower water, which I did not know until I started researching tonight. It's actually a byproduct of the process by which you make neroli essential oil. So neroli is a type of essential oil made from the flowers of bitter oranges or Seville oranges, and it's like steam extracted the oil, and then the steam that rises is also flavored with orange flower, and then it's a hydrosol, so they collect the steam, and when it condenses, it turns into orange flower water, which I didn't know. Oh, lavender is another hugely popular edible flower. That's one of the few ones that I will actually eat, especially if it's combined with lemon. Alright, so that's the sweet ones. Let me look up candied hibiscus. Alright, so nobody really knows where hibiscus is from originally, but it was cultivated in China, Japan, and the Pacific Islands. Might be, white flowered varieties might be native to Hawaii, so that's kind of cool. Let me just make sure I'm not missing any more questions. Oops, I opened the wrong Chrome. That's going to take me a while to get used to. Oh, look at all the comments I'm missing. Okay, elderberry flowers do not taste the same as elderberries, Becca. They're kind of like florally, fruity flavor. Go to IKEA sometime and get their elderberry soft, which is like a drink mix. That's very good. Oh, it is starting to rain. A lot. Okay, this might be round 2 of our hurricane / tornado. Oh my god. Woo! Scary! Hold on. Is that scary, Bye-bye? You want to come back out? Yeah? Okay. Okay, now I'm all wet. But, oh, all the windows except for one are closed. Whew, okay, what an eventful day, you guys. Like, just having a time here tonight. Okay, so, no, elderberry flowers do not taste like elderberry. Neil says you can candy lilac blossoms, which I did not know. Oh, of course, Neil runs the Georgian Kitchen, and he says they import candied rose petals, violets, lilacs, verbena, and mint leaves. Yum. Scott shared an awesome elderflower drink recipe. That sounds awesome. Borage is on my list, Neil, but it's in the savory flower section. We're talking about sweet flowers. And dandelions and nasturtiums. Yes, hello, Sharon. Okay, Ian asks, what's the most poisonous plant or flower you could have in your garden? I don't know. Probably some sort of nightshade. I'm not big up on poisonous plants, you guys. Sorry to disappoint. Okay, let's go back to our hibiscus here. Oh, you guys, now it's like hot in here. I need my cold drink. Okay. Not a lot of great stuff on hibiscus here, people. All right, Scott. I'll have to get back to you. I don't know. But I do know it's delicious tea. And in Jamaica they make a punch with cinnamon. That's also good. Oh, Ashley brings up something I hadn't thought of. Bee balm, also known as monarda or wild bergamot, is an edible flower, and clover, which I would not have thought of. So those are the more sweet edible flowers. So let's get into the savory ones. So, oh, I forgot. Okay, so this isn't really, I'm looking at my list again. This isn't really an edible flower, but there are some kind of florally flavored plants that are used in food and also in potpourri that are related to flowers. So if you've ever heard of orris root, orris is a type of iris, and orris root is often dried and ground into powder, which is used in like potpourri and pomanders and all that fun stuff. And then angelica, which is related to like lovage and wild parsnip, which don't eat wild parsnip, wild carrots. Like it's a long time medieval era candied food. They'd candy the stems, which are hollow. So it's supposed to taste a little bit like anise, a little bitter, and a little bit like carrots, which makes sense because they're related. So those are our sweet ones. There's also marigold and calendula. And calendula is also called pot marigold or poor man's saffron. And of course we also have saffron as well. Nasturtium is edible, very peppery. I've had nasturtium before. And I know some people turn the flower buds of nasturtium, you can pickle them and they taste kind of like capers. Capers are also flower buds. Borage is a really pretty kind of fuzzy looking plant with these pretty blue flowers that taste a little bit like cucumber. You can eat chive blossoms, of course. A lot of people use them to make vinegar. And my personal favorite edible flowers are broccoli and cauliflower, which most people don't think of as flowers. Okay, bye Scott, thanks for joining us. Ooh, borage in a Pim's cup. That sounds fantastic, Neil. Sharon, I did not know tulip bulbs were edible, although that makes sense. But a lot of bulbs are not edible, like muscari and daffodils are not edible. Glenn says, don't eat the clover petals, just suck the nectar from the tips. Glenn, are you secretly a bee? I think you might be. Okay, so that is our overview of edible flowers, kind of a whirlwind, but I thought that was appropriate for spring. So, what else is everybody else up to? I finished my book outline, which is awesome, and today I worked a little bit on my article that I pitched The Atlantic. I haven't heard back from them, but they said it usually takes 2 weeks for them to get back to me, so I'm like, I'm not going to wait, I'm just going to start writing it. Yes, daylilies are also edible, Sharon. Thank you. Do you know where I first learned that daylilies were edible? I think it was in My Side of the Mountain, or it might have been the other side of the mountain, one of those two, by Jean Craighead George. Those were a big influence on me when I was a kid. That got me really interested in wild foods. So yes, you can eat daylily buds. You can also eat cattail shoots and cattail roots. My friend Sabrina, I don't know if she's watching, made cattail shoot pickles the other day. I kind of demand at least a report since I'm a little too far away for a sample. But yeah, all kinds of edible flowers that we just don't eat anymore. I suppose largely because they're, more decorative than anything else. Although I have thought about planting calendula to use in like rice dishes and stuff instead of saffron, but I haven't done it yet. It is a good book. I love those books. Man, it's like really going out there, you guys. I'm seeing the lightning reflected in Facebook Live. So yeah, I worked on my article a little bit today. I don't know if everybody's on my email list. If you're not, you should totally join. I just sent out a new thing. I'm doing a monthly newsletter. It has a free cookbook in it. But I talked about a book I'm reading called Food on the Page by Megan Elias. And I got through a little bit more of it today. I took it out to the hammock outside with Sweetie Pie. We laid in the sun, and I tried to read, and it was just like, nope, I'd rather watch the bees on the Creeping Charlie, so that's what I did. Ooh, Megan is planting calendula this summer. Awesome. Yeah, I have like no edible flowers or anything in my yard because if you plant anything edible, all the animals get it, but hopefully next year we'll remedy that. Oh, and I also forgot about dill seed, right? That's technically a flower, main ingredient in my favorite pickles. But anyway, so Food on the Page I've been reading. It's driving me a little bit crazy, but she does have some really awesome research into Southern cookbooks at the end of the 19th century into the early 20th century. And she posits that Southern cookbooks were really designed for a Northern audience and helped spread the gospel of the lost cause, which I find incredibly intriguing. And now I feel like I have to go read all my early 20th century Southern cookbooks and see if that holds true, but I haven't done that yet because I just read about it today. So yeah, what's everybody else up to? Is it raining where you are? Do you have crazy weather? Like literally I had to wrap my peonies 2 days ago because we got down below freezing. And now it's like 85 degrees today. Sharon and Neil are just gonna like correct me all evening, I think. Sharon brings up zucchini and squash flowers. Well, she didn't bring up squash flowers. I brought up squash flowers. But yes, zucchini blossom, squash blossom, you can eat those. Neil mentions purslane flowers. I know you can eat purslane, but I suppose it just never occurred to me that you could also eat the flowers. Yeah, trying to think of anything else. Now you're like stumping me to figure out if I can come up with anything that I've forgotten. I thought I did pretty good with my list, you guys. But you can always keep commenting in the comments and adding more to our edible flowers list. Yeah, not a whole lot going on. It's really hot in here now that I shut the windows. I might crack one again now that I think it's stopped being crazy with the rain. Oh yeah, well, it's still raining, but it cooled off a lot, so I'm gonna keep that open. Oh, I missed this one. Sharon says you can eat young tumbleweeds if you're out west. What? What do you do with them? How do you cook them? Anyway, this is a really short food history happy hour so far, you guys. I thought I was doing so good coming up with, stuff to talk about in advance, but now I'm at a loss. So ask me some questions so I can answer them. I know I got a late start. Oh man, there's totally a Sweetie Pie hair in my cocktail. Life with a long-haired dog. What else is going on with everybody? Anything? You're so good about coming up with flowers to remind me of. Let me check and see if I missed any on my list. I did not. I was very thorough. Yes, Neil. Megan Elias from Boston University. Yep, she's the director of gastronomy. Their gastronomy program. Her first book was called Stir It Up, which is about home economics. That was very good. I cite that in my book. Food on the Page is her more recent book. It came out in 2017. Marty asked me if I have a copy of Mr. Boston's. I don't have a copy of hardly any bartending guides, actually. Most of the ones I've been using for the happy hours have been digitized vintage ones, which is great. Digitization is great. But I don't think I have a copy of Mr. Boston's. which I should probably remedy at some point. I did do an interview this morning with a journalist. That was very fun. I had a very good time. I'll post the article when it comes out, but we talked a little bit about home economists and recipes on the backs of things, like back of the box recipes. So that was fun. Her premise is that, you know, during this pandemic, we're all kind of eating down our cupboards, and we have less regular access to abundant fresh food. You know, you can't go out to the grocery store like every day, or even a couple times a week. You're supposed to keep it to once a week or less. And so she had some tapioca and saw a recipe on the back of the box and decided she was going to make the recipe, and it turned out to be really good. And that got me thinking that maybe I should check my pantry and see what back of the box recipes are around that I might want to try. I haven't done it yet, but definitely on my list. Do you guys have any back of the box recipes that are staples in your house? Besides maybe Toll House cookies, the most famous one. No? Nobody? I have none in my house. None in my family. Nope. This is really boring, you guys. I don't have anything else to talk about. I feel so bad. We got such a late start because of stupid Facebook and Google Chrome. So yeah. What else do you want to talk about? Let's see. We could talk about farmerettes. If anybody's interested in them. Do you guys know about farmerettes? Should I talk about farmerettes? I don't know if anybody saw my post today about, oh, probably not because I didn't post on the food history page. I posted on my personal page. There is an American Experience show out now. Excuse me. About family farms in the 80s, and they posted a timeline of agricultural history that was very interesting. And agricultural history is food history, which I think a lot of people forget about. Oh, Glenn says our cookie one was the one on top of the Quaker Oats box. That sounds good. Oatmeal cookie recipe, I assume. Neil is mentioning the 2 ways to candy flowers. There's the cheer way, which is you dip the flowers in egg whites and dust them with granulated sugar. And then there's the real way, which is I'm sure the way that Neil does it, which is you cook them very gently in a sugar syrup. Yep. That's the old school way to candy anything. Candied fruits. I've always kind of wanted, I should make Neil make some for me sometime. Or maybe I'll just do it myself. Candied fruits where you candy them by boiling them for a very long time in sugar syrup. Till, like, you know, they're just infused with syrup all the way through. Okay, but I brought up agricultural history because I forgot to bring it in here, but I got my most recent spring edition of Agricultural History Journal today, which has my review of a book called Canned, which is about the history of canning in America. So now that I've gotten the print version, I'll post the my version on the blog, so if anybody wants to read that. It's a very good book. I do recommend it if you are at all interested in canning or, you know, kind of more industrial food history. Very interesting stuff. So Ashley says, our butter box has a soup recipe. What kind of soup, Ashley? Glenn said, along the line of farmerettes, I noticed a show on Acorn called Land Girls. I haven't watched it or looked up anything about it. I have seen some of Land Girls. It got a little overly dramatic for me. I could have used a little more comedy. It is very good. So yes, Land Girls, the women's farm labor movement, started in the UK during World War I to address labor shortages, farm labor shortages in the United Kingdom. and it's tied very closely to the women's suffrage movement during the First World War. It comes over to the United States. I'm forgetting the name of the woman, famous women's suffrage, like, aristocrat in Britain. I'm sure it'll, I want to say Emmeline Pankhurst, but I don't think that's correct. Anyway, so the British ladies bring it to their American cousins, and in the United States, the Women's Land Army is very closely aligned with the women's suffrage movement, and it was designed to prove that women could do manual labor just as well as men, if not better. So there were also national service schools not directly connected with the Women's Land Army, one of them at Farmingdale on Long Island. Most of the Women's Land Army stuff started in New York in the Hudson Valley and then spread throughout the country from there. Yes, Carla said she also seemed over-dramatized. It is a little bit over-dramatized. They could have used a little bit more comedy or lightheartedness in there, although I guess World War I Britain is not necessarily particularly comedic. I recommend instead, I think it's called Jam Busters, which is about a women's institute in a small town in Britain during World War II. That one is also very good. But the Women's Land Army kind of spreads throughout the United States, and I found out recently continues until 1920. So even after the war is over, they're still trying to prove that women could do agricultural labor. Of course, the women who are doing the agricultural labor are largely middle and upper middle class white women, shop girls, teachers, college girls, that kind of stuff. So it doesn't have a lot of longevity after the war, particularly not after agricultural prices bottom out in the 1920s. There's a little mini agricultural recession in the 1920s as prices bottom out after the war. But yeah, it's this interesting little blip in World War I history. And then, of course, in World War II, it is revived. There's a great image, I'll have to see if I can dig it up, of from World War II of a woman, a mother in her original farmerette costume from World War I, standing next to her daughter, who is also a farmerette during World War II, wearing overalls, of course. But yeah, really interesting stuff. Neil says, not even Rotel tomatoes and queso. I do love queso, Neil. Now I want queso. Why did you tell me that? I had a very healthy supper, and now I want bad for me things. Oh, Ashley says the butterbox recipe is tomato soup. Yes, I'm sure it is very good because homemade tomato soup is really not difficult. You just need butter, onions, tomatoes, and then you make a little bit of a roux and put some tomatoes in it and then stir it all together. Yeah. Yep. Strongly recommend homemade tomato soup. Which, of course, I still happen to have our book from last week. Super Tomatoes by Andrew F. Smith, which I think I recommended because it has a lot of information about New Jersey truck gardens and Jersey tomatoes. But there's also, in the back of this book, let me just show you how much of this book is devoted to recipes. So, the historical recipes section, which is literally just all tomato soup recipes, is that much of the book right here. So, when you get a chance, you should check it out. Gosh, it's hot, you guys. I'm like sweating in here. I'm not ready for it to be summer already. It's May 15th. Can we have some more spring? Complain, complain. Anyway. So yeah, Land Girls, I mean, definitely watch it if you want to, but it was a little over-dramatized for me. Oh, Neil posted a recipe for delicate graham cracker cake. Wow, delicate graham cracker cake. That should not be a tongue twister. On the back of the Nabisco graham cracker box. Huh. it really literally is a cake recipe. I thought maybe it was going to be an icebox cake. But it is a real live cake that you bake. Interesting. I wonder if that was based off of, there are some recipes, particularly in Eastern Europe, that call for like breadcrumbs or cake crumbs when you're baking a new cake. Chad's telling me that Sweetie Pie 1 second. You can open the door and let her in. She's just gonna want out again. What? Do you want to come in? You wanna? No? She's just being bratty. Anyway, so yeah, there's like a whole genre of recipes that use up breadcrumbs or stale cake or cake crumbs, but so maybe it's not too much of a stretch to use graham crackers instead. Brandy says tomato soup and grilled cheese, perfect for cruddy weather. Yes, one of my favorites. Definitely too hot for that tonight. For dinner I had a salad that I'm going to post on the blog, probably on Monday for Meatless Monday, but some food historian fans will remember that I posted a couple of weeks ago, God, do I remember, about sturdy salads. And so I had one of those tonight. It's a green bean and white bean salad with lemon cream vinaigrette and Parmesan cheese. And it was pretty good. I would make it again. I would probably let it marinate overnight though, because the beans didn't quite absorb the dressing like I'd hoped. But it was good. I would make it again. Could also make it with potatoes or cauliflower, whatever you want. So yeah, that was my hot weather supper. And I don't think you can really tell, but my fingers are just the slightest bit purple on the edges because I supremed a couple of grapefruits and a couple of blood oranges to go with strawberries, and I made a little salad. So the blood oranges stained my fingers a little bit, but I don't think you guys can really tell. That's the Sweetie Pie begging to go out now that she's been let in. But guess what? You have to stay. You're stuck now, and I'm not going to pick you up because it's hot out. It's so hot out. Yes. Anyway, this is a little cocktail, you guys. I'm finishing it really fast. What else do you want to talk about? Anything? We've only been on for 39 minutes. I'm feeling a dearth of questions here, but that's okay if you guys aren't into it. Let's see, what else could I talk about besides my dog? Because she's being silly right now. You guys think about some questions. I'm gonna let Sweetie Pie back out because she's driving me crazy. What? Apparently, the couch on the porch is not good enough. She wanted to be on the living room couch. Chad should pop in and say hello, but he won't. He refuses. He's camera shy. Which is funny for someone who spent the day filming at work. So you'll have to wait and see him star in another production from the Cantonment. You guys, I'm like dying in here. Marty says her dog is suddenly very interested in this live stream. I'm assuming that's because Sweetie Pie was whining. Yes. Yep. I don't know what else to talk about, you guys. I'm totally at a loss. Haven't really done a whole lot else food related. Sweetie Pie always has a lot to say, Neil. Oh my gosh, you should hear her sometimes. She grunts when you rub her belly or pick her up and give her snuggles. She whines, she talks, she barks. There's a lot of barking. She would be the perfect dog if not for the barking. But there's just a lot of barking at anything, at nothing. Not so much during the day. Normally when people come home, like she literally will not stop barking if one of us walks in the door until the other person picks her up. and we both snuggle her. So maybe you're right about who has who trained. She's pretty well spoiled. Yeah, just checking to see if anybody else has any comments, and you guys don't. So Neil, that sounds awesome. Neil posted orange, red onion, finocchio. I don't know what that is. It's like a type of lettuce, I assume, similar to radicchio. I don't know. You'll have to tell me. And pecorino cheese is a salad. That sounds delicious. I have a whole list of salads. I thought that the bean and parmesan salad had come from a vintage cookbook, but now I can't find it. So maybe it was in my head. Ooh, Liz saves the day. Top 5 recipes a new cook should master during the pandemic. That is a good question. I am going to just make a comment of Brandy's first. She says, ages ago we used to make key lime pie from the back of the Eagle brand condensed milk. I totally forgot about this. Now that you mention it, the reporter asked me if there was any back of the box recipe that I cooked, and I said no, but I'm realizing now that that's a lie, because I make pumpkin pie from the back of the Libby canned pumpkin can. That is the only, why make any other recipe? It's so perfect. Why not? Okay, top 5 recipes. So, number 1 is one that I made yesterday. I'm going to say that you should master Mornay sauce for making homemade macaroni and cheese. Not homemade pasta, just boil whatever pasta. But you should definitely master making a white sauce with cheese. My recipe is very straightforward. It's equal parts flour and butter. So I normally do, like, if I'm going to do a pound of macaroni for macaroni and cheese, I do a half cup or 1 stick of butter and a half cup of flour. You put the butter in a saucepan. You need at least a 2-quart saucepan. You let the butter get melted over medium heat, and when it starts to boil or sizzle, that's when you add the flour. You can do it all at once. And then the best thing for making homemade macaroni and cheese and homemade sauces is to have a sauce whisk. They are very hard to find now for some reason. I got mine at IKEA for like $1. But it's very effective. It's kind of goes straight down, and then it comes out, so it's flat in a half circle. And then there's like a little spring all around the half circle. And it's a great for making sauces because you can get it flat right to the bottom of the pan to keep the sauce from burning or from sticking to the bottom of the pan. So you let the flour and the butter cook for a little bit. You don't want it to get brown. You don't want brown butter sauce for macaroni and cheese. Trust me, I did that on accident once. It did not turn out well. But you let it cook so the raw flour taste gets out. You add your milk gradually, let it thicken up between additions, and then I put shredded cheddar, and my secret ingredient is a little bit of Dijon mustard, and then a ton of salt. Like, probably more salt than you think. I mean, taste as you go, but definitely, because, especially if you don't salt your pasta water, your pasta is going to be very bland, and you'll need the salt in the sauce to offset the blandness of the macaroni. I mean, I always undersalt a little bit because I figure people can add their own salt and pepper. I like mine very salty, so I add extra salt for my macaroni and cheese. But yeah, macaroni and cheese is definitely one. Thank you for clarifying, Neil, that finocchio is fennel. That's what I thought. Not a huge fennel fan. Not a fan of like anisey, licoricey flavors in general. But definitely, if you haven't had fennel, you should at least give it a try. All right, so that's number 1. I'm trying to think of what are some other good ones. I mean, definitely number 2 is super easy. A homemade vinaigrette. I learned mine from my mom. I call it 3-2-1 vinaigrette, although you can also do 3-3-1. So it's 3 tablespoons of olive oil, 3 tablespoons of an acid. You can use any kind of vinegar or lemon juice. And then 1 tablespoon of Dijon mustard, which not only adds a little bit of salt, but also acts as an emulsifier. So I use that for like any salad ever, bean salads, lentil salads. It's really great on like greens salad, especially if you're having it with something a little bit fattier. I use it in the red bean and herb salad that I posted on my blog. I use it for everything. Potato salad. Anything you want a vinaigrette for, that's the vinaigrette that you should use. And it's so easy, and the 3-2-1, 3 tablespoons of oil, 2 or 3 tablespoons of vinegar, and a tablespoon of Dijon mustard makes just enough. You can double it if you want to. It doesn't keep that well in the fridge. The oil tends to separate out a little bit when it gets cold. But that's super easy, and I use it for everything. Just checking to make sure I'm not missing anybody. So that's 2. Probably you should make biscuits. That's what you should do. You should make Dory Greenspan's cream biscuits recipe. You have to have heavy cream on hand, but they are dead easy, and go with anything. Don't worry about round biscuits. Just pat the biscuit dough into a rectangle and cut it with a knife and have square biscuits, because why wouldn't you? And then you don't have to worry about re-rolling them and making them too tough and all that fun stuff. Trying to think of what else. Definitely, all right, I'm gonna give you my other secret recipe live on the internet. You're welcome. So I've always been afraid of like cold water pie crust. I've never actually made like real pie crust before. I make what I call like cheater pie crust, which is very tender. It's almost more like pastry. And I call it Russian pie crust because I found it. It's actually from a cookie recipe from the Russian Heritage Cookbook. I found this like when I was in college, basically. And it is a 1/4 pound of butter, which is 1 stick, because 4 sticks is a pound. So a stick of butter, a 1/4 pound of farmer cheese, and 1 cup of flour. So you cream the softened butter and the farmer cheese, and then you mix in the flour. Pretty sure it's 1 cup. I will double check that and post in the comments. I always make like a whole pound at a time. But it's pretty much impossible to overwork. You can roll it super thin. You can fill it with jam and make cookies, which is what the original recipe called for. I use it for any kind of savory filled thing. Like that's what I use for lentils Wellington that I make every Christmas. I used it to make mushroom pasties. I used it to make Cornish pasties. I've used it for something they make called creamy vegetable pie. I've made it it's really great for slab pies because you can roll it really thin and it doesn't fall apart. So yeah, you can make pretty much anything out of it, and it's fantastic and really easy to work with. It freezes pretty well too if you want to just freeze the raw dough. Let's see. Am I only up to 3? Is that only 3? No, that's 4. Okay, 5. This is a really great question, Liz. You're really forcing me to think. 5. What's another recipe you should master during the pandemic? This is really like 1.5, which is because it's very much related to making macaroni and cheese, but you should totally master gravy. So if you roast a chicken or any turkey, whatever, if you make a pot roast, save the drippings, the fat, and again, you make a roux with equal parts fat and flour, and then you add, instead of milk, although you can add milk, I usually use a combination of stock, and sometimes I'll add a little milk for turkey gravy. But yeah, you add any kind of stock, chicken stock, beef stock, whatever you want, depending on what you're making, or milk, and then that's your gravy. You tend to make it a little bit thinner than you would for macaroni and cheese. So that's really like 1.5 because they're very related techniques. So what's number 5? I don't know, a cake, a good cake recipe. Lazy Daisy cake is pretty straightforward, and tastes delicious, especially if you put the broiled coconut topping on it. And then you can do whatever. Oh, you know what? Actually, no, you should master pancakes if you haven't already. I'll post my pancake recipe, or if you have Joy of Cooking, it's the Joy of Cooking pancake recipe with an extra egg in it when I double it, I think. So yeah, there's your 5 recipes you should master. Macaroni and cheese and gravy, vinaigrette, Biscuits, cream biscuits. Dory Greenspan has a very good recipe. I'm missing them already. Cake, Lazy Daisy cake. And what was the last one? Somebody correct me. I don't remember. Watch the video again if you want to find out, I guess, or write it down when I'm talking. So yeah. Wow, that was awesome. That was such a great question. Thanks, Liz. I will totally make a blog post with all of these recipes so you don't have to frantically write them down while I'm talking. But yeah, those are all really good basic recipes. You know, if you know how to boil pasta and cut up vegetables and roast things, if you have those recipes, you can make a lot of different foods. So yeah, all good recipes for a new cook. Okay. Any other questions? That was such a good question. I'm like really regretting I don't have more cocktail, but not enough to make another one, you guys. I'm just thirsty. It's so hot. Oh, Liz says her family has special pancakes that's just eggs, flour, milk, and salt. What? You don't, there's no baking powder in it? Or baking soda? Okay. Yes, making your own mac and cheese is incredibly rewarding, and once you get used to making the roux, like if you start the water boiling and then you make the roux, and then when the water's boiling you put the pasta in, and then you finish making the sauce, and usually it's all done about the same time, and it takes like maybe half an hour, 20 minutes if you're fast, and your water boils quickly. Yeah, homemade mac and cheese is like super rewarding. Highly recommend it. Not that much more expensive than boxed mac and cheese, especially if you do like I do and you buy the store brand pasta, which is like $1 a pound. That's mac and cheese. You don't need anything super fancy. Okay, no baking powder in the pancakes and they look like crepes. That sounds good. Mine are more like traditional buttermilk pancakes, and you definitely can put buttermilk in them and they get fluffier if you do that, but it's not required. Glenn says, in a pinch, I once used Country Crock, fake butter, for those who are watching margarine, to make pie crust, and it wasn't the greatest, but it was super easy to work, very elastic. Yes. There's a reason why a lot of people prefer lard for pie crust, because it does not crumble as well as, or as much as all butter pie crust. Flavor is not quite the same. I'd be very interested to know how the Country Crock tasted. Like, was it crumbly? Was it flaky? I'm guessing probably it wasn't that flaky, because part of what makes pie crust flaky is that you have tiny, like, little bits of fat, and then when the pie crust bakes, the fat like liquefies and evaporates, and it makes those tiny little pockets. That's why also some people put alcohol, like vodka, in their pie crust. It does kind of the same thing. I did see a crazy recipe. My friend Jonelle shared this video with me. A woman did a Depression era pie recipe called water pie. I'll have to look it up and share it. Actually, let me see if I can find it quickly. And then Brandy asks, why did lard go out of vogue? That is such a question. So part of it, I think the main reason why lard went out of vogue is because people got much more concerned with animal fat intake. And we now know that all of the connections between animal fats and cholesterol and heart attacks are pretty specious and don't really have any real basis in fact, and that study from the 1950s was largely funded by the sugar lobby because they didn't want people to know that sugar does have a connection to heart disease. But also, like, the scientist is like, animal fat is, you know, hard at room temperature, so that must be the same as what's hardening your arteries. It's like, it's not really how science works, you guys. But that definitely played a big role. Also, as people started to move more and more into urban areas, people were not raising their own hogs anymore, and so you're not making your own lard. And also, as meat is kind of, I don't want to say this, not only industrialized, but also, you're not going to a butcher anymore necessarily. So there's less access, I think, to lard. But definitely health consciousness had something to do with it big time. Part of that, I think, is because as the 20th century wore on, more and more people were working more sedentary jobs. And we were driving a lot more, so we simply weren't burning enough calories. So if you ate really fatty things all the time, you didn't burn the calories. Also, central heat. People didn't need to burn as many calories during the wintertime. So you didn't need those fatty things like you did in the 19th and early 20th century. But definitely, I think health consciousness has a lot to do with it. A book that I reviewed that came out last year, I think, called Capitalist Pigs, has a whole section on how the pork industry basically rebred hogs to emphasize lean meat, like pork loin and stuff like that, instead of lard. So they completely changed how, pigs' physiology to match what they thought people wanted. So that's why, most pork that you see in stores today is very lean, because that's how hogs are raised. They're not raised primarily as lard animals anymore, which they were historically. So, yeah, good question. A lot of lard you see in stores today is homogenized, just like Crisco and other trans fats. So definitely, if you can get fresh lard, I recommend it. That is, if you want to master a cooking technique during quarantine, rendering your own fat is definitely something you can do if you go to a butcher. Even if you have local hogs, getting raw pig pork fat is pretty easy to do. Obviously, the best lard is leaf lard, which comes from a specific part of the pig, which I can't remember what it is. But any pork lard will do. You basically chop it up into little bits, because it does have some connective tissue in it. Chop it up into little bits and just cook it in a regular pot over low heat. And the fat will basically melt out of it. You want to keep an eye on it so it doesn't burn. And then you strain it. You can strain it just through a paper towel and a funnel into a jar. And then when it hardens, you have lard, right? And then the leftover bits that should be all brown and crispy are called cracklins. And if you salt them, you can eat them like pork skin, or you can make cracklin bread, which is a type of cornbread. You can do the same thing with any kind of animal fat. You can make tallow out of rendered beef fat or suet. Doesn't smell the greatest, so definitely recommend that you have your stove fan on and some windows open, or do it outside on the grill. You can also render chicken fat into schmaltz, which was used a lot in Jewish cooking, especially Ashkenazi Jewish immigrant cuisine in the United States. I've been taking this YIVO course on Ashkenazi cuisine, and I learned that actually in Eastern Europe and in European Ashkenazi foodways, rendered duck and goose fat are actually more desirable than chicken fat. Like rendered chicken fat, schmaltz was kind of like the low class version, but it's used extensively in the United States as an alternative to lard. But then also, I'm sure you've seen me post articles a lot, because I think it's fascinating that Crisco really capitalized on the Jewish market, because here's this shelf-stable lard analog that has nothing to do with animals, and it's relatively flavorless, unlike schmaltz, which does taste like chicken. Although apparently some people did make cookies with schmaltz instead of butter, which I find interesting. Yes, matzo balls, yes. Schmaltz is used a lot in Jewish cooking. And you can render your own. I've done it. Next time you get a chicken or like cut up chicken thighs, pull all the fat off, chop it up, cook it over low heat until all the fat melts out, strain it. There you go. Okay, Glenn is reporting back on his country crock pie crust. Not at all flaky, but he normally rolls it out 3 times to make 8 layers. So it made good thin layers. All right, that's pretty cool. Oh, interesting. Okay, Glenn says instead of starting with a roux, I assume for macaroni and cheese, he uses a technique from his fondue cookbook of mixing starch with the cheese, I assume you mean cornstarch, to coat it so it melts without clumping. Interesting. I will say the macaroni and cheese, if you can find a sauce whisk, it's a really good investment because that's part of what makes the sauce smooth and incorporated is you just are like furiously whisking it the whole time. All right, I cannot find the water pie, but when I track it down, I will share it with everybody because it's kind of a crazy thing, but it actually works. So, all right. On that note, I think we're going to be done. Thank you so much for coming up with such awesome questions. If I can find the water pie, I will post it. I will definitely make a blog post of the 5 recipes to master for new cooks during quarantine. And yeah, this is fun. I'm sorry we got so interrupted by the weather and by Facebook being dumb and making me download Chrome beta. But hopefully we won't have any delays next time. If you have any ideas for what you'd like to talk about next Friday, drop them in the comments, drop me a line, send me an email, whatever you want to do. And I will see everybody next Friday at 8 o'clock right here on Facebook. This is Sarah Wasper Johnson, the food historian, signing out. Thanks everybody so much. Have a great night.